leurs enfants, un clocher pour les mariages, les pionniers travaillent sur le temps. Ils rêvent d'un village, des cours d'école pour leurs enfants, un clocher pour les mariages. Maillardville, tu as 100 ans.
This is Patrick McCarthy reporting with Tri-Cities Community Television. We're down in our studios at Lee Square in Port Coquitlam. But today we have a special guest that comes from us from the Coquitlam region, actually the Maillardville region. Madame Dumas, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Pleasure.
And I know you are an executive director of the Société de Francophone.
I'm the executive director of Société Francophone de Maillardville. Maillardville being a community that started off in 1909 with the coming of many Francophones from back east, namely from Gatineau and Montreal and Sherbrooke. They came here on a promise of a better world, better land. And I think they did well for themselves. So now these families, 200 families came here. And of course, they weren't the first there because prior to them, I mean, there were First Nations, then there was the people that came to work in the mill, which was Japanese, Chinese, and East Indian. So the motivation for people to invite these Francophone communities to come here was racially motivated because the mill wanted to have white workforce. Therefore, they figured since BC and Quebec to this day is still both provinces are the ones that have the greater wood industry, so hence why they went to Quebec to get these people to come here. And they formed this little community, which at the beginning was called Frenchtown. But then when they built the first church, as every good French-Canadian Catholic community should have, a church was built. And the first priest of the parish, his name was Father Maillard, hence why we called the community Maillardville in his honor. So now Maillardville has gone on for many, many years, and in 2009, we celebrated the 100th anniversary, which was a great celebration of the community with many different aspects, music and visual arts. I mean, there was a really large event happening. And in 2019, we will be celebrating the 110th anniversary. It won't be as large as the 100th anniversary, but we will make sure to commemorate, again, these brave people that came and sacrificed a lot to come here and be part of this beautiful province.
So can you tell me a little bit about some people don't realize that Maillardville is a large French community outside of Quebec. I don't want to say it's one of the largest, but a little bit about the size of Maillardville.
Maillardville was considered for many, many years, and still is somewhat, the cradle of Francophones in British Columbia. There are larger communities, Francophone communities in Canada, such as St. Boniface, which is Winnipeg. But there are a lot more Francophones in BC than any other Western province. It's just that instead of being everybody being in one same region, we're all over the province. So that's what makes the difference. But no, it was considered the cradle of Francophones, and it was a community that was established in the sense that, it had a doctor, it had a bank, it had some, thrift stores and so forth and so on. So you could live on a daily basis only in French if you wanted to. So they had created this possibility for all of those people living there. So that's basically why Maillardville had that specific status of cradle of Francophones in British Columbia.
So and the last question is about the church. The church, in its modern sense, is kind of the cornerstone of the history and the culture. So a little bit about the importance of the church in Maillardville today.
Well, in Maillardville, we have two parishes now, two French parishes, which was, the first one was Notre-Dame de Lourdes, Our Lady of Lourdes, and the second one was Our Lady of Fatima, Notre-Dame de Fatima, that was built, I believe, in the 50s. And that somewhat was not a positive thing when you think about it later on, is that it really did split the community. So people that were all attending church services or community services at Our Lady of Lourdes, well, all of a sudden in the 50s, the community was split and some went on the west side of Blue Mountain where their church was built there. So I think the church, quite honestly, the one that has maintained a lot of Francophone realities and a service all in French and so forth and so on, is now the newer church, which is Our Lady of Fatima. Our Lady of Lourdes, which is the historical church, unfortunately, they have a service that's done mixed French and English. They try their best. The parish priest does not speak French, so he's being creative as much as he can. But I think the community has changed, and somewhat because of that other church, it kind of, everybody went down that direction. But Maillardville, in the eyes of Francophones in our neighborhood, continues to be around that first church, which is Laval Square. So that's where people consider that the heritage truly belongs.
So, Monsieur Bakou, so now we want to ask you something about the future of Maillardville. So we've got the history, and just get your sense of how you see the region being affected or under, what will happen to it as it goes forward, or what you hope it happens to it as it goes forward. So.
The future of Maillardville is somewhat shaky. And I think the reason why it's shaky, it's not that Francophones are not there anymore. It's all about the will of the elected officials and how they want to truly celebrate the importance of this community historically. And when we look at French being spoken, a lot more people are speaking French now. French immersion programs are bursting at the seams. We have a French school, local regional school that's been rebuilt this year, where as they open, they will already have, portables in the backyard because they'll have over 700 students already. So these are all things that are real and existing. But like I said, if the political will is not there to want to maintain the heritage and the vitality of the community, it's very difficult for nonprofit groups such as ours to continue on. I have great dreams. I share those dreams with many, many people in Maillardville, and there's no doubt that a lot of hearts are broken quite often about Maillardville not having had its own cultural center, its own identity. And to me, I find that sad because when I look at communities such as Steveston, Steveston being in a city where it's mainly Chinese people that are there, had there not been someone who had the vision of considering also the contribution of the Japanese people that lived there way back, nothing would be showcased anymore about the contribution also of the Japanese community over there. But because someone had that vision and said, let's do it, because I don't think the Chinese community, it's normal. You think about your own, so I don't think their thoughts would have been around the Japanese community, but someone did think about it. And that's important, and that's where I find it sad that Maillardville is really the only community of its kind in BC. And like I said, the political will is still lacking to make that place a special place. We've done so far, in 22 years, 8 different feasibility studies that demonstrated the same thing time after time. build a cultural center, a Francophone cultural center, because it will be supported very easily. But then again, you know, I mean, the power that be is not in the nonprofit world. So, you know, I've been there 22 years, don't know how many more years I'll be there, but I continue fighting because I'm a fighter and I want to make sure that for my grandchildren, this possibility does exist, for them to be able to do celebrations and do things in French.
Do you see that is Maillardville just going to be a bunch of signs that say this used to be the cradle of French culture outside of Quebec?
I think culture as itself, when we see it somewhat being diluted the way that we are diluting, I think it's very sad. I think Chinatown is beautiful, and I find that sad that that reality has moved on to another area of Metro Vancouver in Richmond. We look at the East Indian community also, where, you know, you had the Punjabi market area that now is happening in Delta much more than it used to be on Fraser and all that. And I find that this urban reality that is growing is somewhat diluting the reality of all these beautiful communities that existed. And I'm not a fan of multiculturalism. I've never been. And the reason is that I'm for interculturalism. I want everybody to take its rightful place. I think multiculturalism is just a bunch of people thrown in a basket. We shake that up and see what comes out. And what comes out usually, exactly, it is a diluted reality. So I think we have to make place, obviously, multiculturalism as it was created in the 60s and 70s under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I don't think it's working. I don't think it is. It's a reality that should be moving on. It should be revisited to really give everybody a chance to showcase what they're all about.
So the last question, magically, we have sent you 100 years forward for 22 minutes to walk through Maillardville, or an hour. What do you hope you see?
100 years from now, should I still have the magical possibility of being around, I would like to see little bistros and French restaurants, place where people can really get a sense of what La Francophonie is all about. I would hope to see that lovely cultural center that would be for young and old to come and experience culture in French at its, you know, at its best, with songs, with dance, with conferences, with every type of way that exchanges can be created. Culture is very important. Culture is really, whether it be French culture or any other culture, I think it's important to maintain the reality of all our communities, because again, it comes down to that wanting to dilute the whole reality. It's very harmful and it's very sad. We look at the First Nation people with the reconciliation movement right now, how wanting to dilute these communities across Canada, the impact it has had, the negative impact it has had. And now that you see this new will to find out more about what has been done and how can we fix it. Well, let's take that as an example for not creating the same thing with other communities.
Is there anything I haven't asked you want to ask?
No. No, I feel Maillardville is in my heart. I'm one of the lucky ones who wakes up every morning happy to go to work, because I truly am passionate about my community, and I call it my community, although I'm a Montrealer. Maillardville is my community. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Well, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And all the work you're doing.
Thank you very much.
I'm here to talk about our culture. And when I was thinking about what I was going to present today, I didn't realize that I would have to follow up such a tough act. So I'm going to keep it simple. I've got some stories to tell. The first thing that we know about Canada is nobody's from here. Yes? Nobody's from here. I would even have to say that I think a lot of the Aboriginals are from someplace else. You know, that's just me, but that's what I think. And so what we do is we come to this place, we take what we remember from our childhoods and our cultures and our heritages, we come to this place, we make a new life with it, don't we? My own people, the French Canadian people, they didn't come from Quebec, they came from other places. In my immediate family, my family's been in Maillardville here for maybe about 4 generations. But we didn't come from here, we came from someplace else. And we've got places across Canada, the St. Boniface, St. Paul, a lot of the colonies where the fur trade or where industry brought them, where they settled, and that's where they grew. And you know, as I'm listening to the Bhangra and all the other music that's being played here, I'm realizing that those cultures also picked up along the way, didn't they? You know, so French Canadian music is no different. When we come to Quebec, in 1580 with Jacques Cartier, right? He doesn't get credit anymore because history now knows it wasn't Christopher Columbus, it wasn't any of these guys, Basque fishermen, Vikings from the Nordic countries, Irish monks, they've all been to this continent already, long before. On the west coast, we're finding currency far inland in British Columbia that come from ancient China. So what do we make of that? We realize, of course, that nobody can claim this country. It belongs to everybody. We know that for a fact. So as the French are coming across the water back in Jacques Cartier's time, right? The boats are not very good and instruments are very expensive. So when these people get to the New World, how do they entertain themselves? Well, they make instruments out of sticks and out of bones and bangle in themselves, and they make music with their mouth. If you look at French Canadian music now, those traditions still have all of those elements. You see spoons, you see bones, you see all kinds of percussion instruments that are part of the music of French Canadian culture. And of course, back then, because there was no instruments, they made music with their mouths. And so we have a whole strain of music called réel de bouche. That means mouth music. Now you hear the sort of things like tabida, tabidi, tabadilda, dabida, dabidil, dabida, da da, dabidi, dabidil, dabidil, da da, dabidibada, didil, dabidabadidil, di, dabidil, da, dabidibada, da da, dabidi, dabidil, dabida, da da, dabidabidil, dabidabada, dibida, da, didil, da. And when you have a whole lot of people sitting in a circle, they're making their own music and they can dance to it and they start adding things to it. And when they start banging on sticks and banging on spoons, it's quite breathtaking. Of course, later on, instruments did start coming to North America with some success, among those, this guy. How many people here think this is a violin? How many people think this is a fiddle? You're both right. You're both right. See, the Scottish have a saying. They say that the violin sings, but the fiddle dances. See, so when you think in terms of folk music and the kind of music that you would dance to, those are fiddlers that play that music. So, we know that in our French Canadian culture also includes the people who were born in Canada who were the children of the natives, Indians, and European fathers. Country-born women and European fathers. And they are considered our people as well. And when they saw the violin, they were so fascinated that they actually learned to play their own style. So there is a legend that talks about what they call the Red River Jig. The Red River Jig is a Métis song. By the way, Métis is the word that they use to describe the half-breeds that came out of these unions. Métis comes from the Spanish word mestizo, which means mixed blood. And so they became the true children of Canada. There were so many of them, and they were the children of the Scots, of the English, of the Irish, of the Welsh. They were the children of the French, by far. And they were the ones that ran Canada for so many years, up until the 10 Years' War. And so we owe those people a lot, but they have been forgotten in history. And only now, lately, are they coming back to their own and reestablishing themselves as a true Canadian culture. So we see we don't just recognize, though, the one group of people who self-identified at Red River. We see every one of them right across Canada, from the Mi'kmaws right to the Haida. And so we know that those people, they have their place here. Now this tune here, the fiddlers that came out of that culture were actually well organized. They all knew each other and they all studied from each other. And once a year they would go to a big convention where the Red River and the Athabasca? Assiniboine River, that's correct. Yes, thank you. Do you know the story? Oh, good. That's right. I was just going to come up with another river just to get me through. So anyway, they'd have this great big encampment. All the fiddlers would come, and they would all play. They would all play for each other. They would learn from each other. They would get ideas. One night, this young fiddler is walking up along the hillside, and he's hearing this music coming out of the encampment. And he heard like patterns coming out over the wind on the prairie. And he got an inspiration on that sound, and that became known as the Red River Jig. Does anybody know how it goes? Well, for all of a sudden now. This violin here was bought by my grandmother when she was a telephone operator in Gravelbook, Saskatchewan, around 1910. So it's over 100 years old now, that I inherited from her. And to be honest, it's one of the best violins I've had a chance to play so far. So I'm lucky to have the instruments that I do have. Thanks for mentioning that. Okay, so I guess I'll play one more tune for you. The three great violin songs of Canada are called Liberty, Soldier's Joy, and St. Anne's Reel. St. Anne is the patron saint of Quebec. She was also the patron saint of all the voyageurs. And all along the South Saskatchewan River and the Great Lakes, where the canoe brigades would run back and forth, they had little, what do you call it? Statues. Yeah, it was kind of like a, I can't think of the word right now, but it's a place where you would stop and reflect and ask for protection and that sort of thing. The voyageurs would offer their mites. I think I'm thinking of the word. It's not important, is it? Mini church. That's right. It's kind of like a shrine, yeah.
Bon, ben bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes ici au Centre Bel-Âge. Welcome everyone and welcome to my special guest and also to the viewers here. We are in a very special moment in history here. Today, I saw a very moving experience of people that have links and roots to the past, to the present, and to the future. What we have here today was a celebration and a reunion one more time, interculturally speaking, between peoples that have a link to the largest mill of the British Empire, Fraser Mills, and also to this area. So, bienvenue tout le monde, welcome. What I'd like to know for the viewers' perspective is, how did this day come about? And I'm going to go to, well, first of all, Abnash, that I know, had an article printed in the paper. And why did this come about? Why was this article written?
I started a South Asian group in February, and I wanted the people to know that there is a group is in Dogwood. And other thing, I wanted to break a boundary between other community and South Asian community. And to me, breaking boundary is very important.
Wonderful. And of course, now we go to Lisa, which somehow sees this article in the Tri-City News. So Lisa, maybe explain away how this came about, because somehow you were inspired by the story. Okay.
Well, first of all, I'm an avid reader of Tri-City News. It's such a great publication in our community. And my bosses asked me to expand our membership here at Club Bel-Âge to include the broader community, not just Francophones, because Indians, Chinese, and Japanese also worked at Fraser Mills and were a very important part of the history. So I saw this article in August about Abnash Kaur Gill and her South Asian group, and I thought, ooh, what a great idea. I'm going to go to Dogwood and introduce myself. So we met in September, and I proposed the idea of the first annual, maybe semi-annual, South Asian French-Canadian song and food cultural gathering. And today it happened, November 4th, 2017, and I think it was a huge success.
This is the whole point. From the Maillardville story perspective in the project that is going on, we are searching for stories that link the beginnings of Coquitlam, the Coquitlam we know today, but also the Coquitlam of a settlement called Maillardville, and then a settlement which a lot of people do not realize. Fraser Mills was a place unto its own. It was an incorporation. It was a village. And mysteriously by 1913, although the mill was part of the Coquitlam area, New West, it's kind of an abstraction, but then it incorporated in 1913, and then to become part of Coquitlam one more time by 1971. In between time, there's a whole story about Fraser Mills. And with that in mind, je vous dis tous, à la prochaine. Nous allons continuer cette histoire, cette recherche. Nous allons aller vers le futur, le présent et le passé. Merci. On est ici au Centre Bellage.
Ils rêvent d'un village, écoutent d'école pour leurs enfants, un clocher pour les mariages, les pionniers traversent le temps. Ils rêvent d'un village, écoutent d'école pour leurs enfants, un clocher pour les mariages. Maillardville, tu as 100 ans.
This program was made possible by funding provided by the City of Coquitlam, the Francophone Affairs Program of BC, and TELUS.